Yes, so then I will press also record that in case anything gets lost, I have it on my hard disk.
Sounds good.
And now I need to share the link. Just let me do this. So, great. So, yes. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ISP Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Thorsten Schmidt. Today, I'm glad to have Meridith Powell with me in the show. We will speak about the International Internet Day, which was yesterday, 51 years ago, really the launch of the Internet, which had a dramatic impact on our society. We will speak about the question, are network operators the railroad companies of tomorrow, or are the operators really the modern lifeblood of our society? And Meridith, we will speak about, and I love to speak about Jack Daniels. but first of all, Meridith, for all the listeners who do not know you, who are you?
Oh, yes. Well, I am a business growth strategist, and my passion is helping organizations and leaders learn how to turn uncertainty to competitive advantage, whether it's sales, whether it's leadership, whether it's just business strategy. I really am dedicated and committed to working with organizations. I work quite a bit in the telecommunications industry, but really learning how to navigate and take their organizations to the next level, but really navigate the level of a change, especially what we're experiencing right now. And right now, you are at my home studio here in Asheville, North Carolina, where I spend the majority of my time now working from my home.
That's great. So in US, it's still early in the morning. I guess it's 7 a.m. or something like this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is 7 a.m. But lucky for you, Torsten, I'm an early bird.
Okay, that's great. For me, it depends on the situation. So I'm really comfortable with getting up early, but I also like to be late out in the evening. So yeah, Meridith, just let me add some facts about you. You are noticed at one of the top 15 business growth experts to watch, top 41 motivational speakers, top 15 bloggers, and award-winning author. So let me just add this. And I guess there was great news this week. You won an award. Maybe you can speak a little bit about this. What was this? So sounds really great.
So this week I got the news that I was named one of the top 50 keynote speakers. So I was very excited about that because I really love my message. I put a lot into it, and it was a real honor to be named not only top 50, but really with an incredible caliber of people. So that made for a good week.
Yeah, that's great, and I really appreciate it. So great. Yeah, let us jump to the topic. We're facing the 51 birth of the internet. So what is your experience with the growth of the internet so far in the last years?
Wow, I was shocked to hear you say that it has been 51 years because wow, talk about a service that has made progress in 51 years. I mean, I am old enough to remember when we had to use dial-up, and it would take forever to get anything on the internet. And to think that here I am now in my home on a podcast with you. You're in Europe. I'm here in the US, and this has become commonplace. I mean, for us to be doing business, having conversations, working with people around the globe, I think that in 51 years, the internet has completely transformed not only how we do business, but where we do business and what we have the ability to do and who we have the ability to connect with. I just can't imagine what's next. Because I also think about where would we have been in the middle of this pandemic without the internet, right? I mean, it's how we stay engaged with our families. It's how we've been allowed to run our businesses. It's how we've gotten our entertainment. And I think that we're comfortable with it now. I think a lot of the things that have happened with the internet due to the pandemic are probably things that are here to stay. I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to be working from this basement for a long time.
Yeah, okay. So thanks for that. I mean, the story of the internet is amazing. Maybe let me just add you the story, how it started like 51 years ago. It was between two colleges that they tried to commit a message or send a message between the two universities, and it really came down that the receiving computer crashed after receiving, I guess, 3 letters, and they need to reboot the entire system. And I really think that's amazing, because like 50 years is not this big, but it's what happens in this duration is really, really crazy. And I mean, the really growth is like in the last 10 or 20 years, where we see a lot of people getting online. I mean, we are still at half of the world population, a little bit more than half of the world population are online, but there are a lot of people who do not have internet. And I think it's also a quite challenging topic for them to face during maybe also during the pandemic. But the story is really a great success. And then like all the big companies, like we all know, like Apple, Google, Facebook, and all of them, it's really amazing. And most of the stuff's like where I'm always once again excited is like the first iPhone was released, I guess it was 2006 or 2007. And YouTube also, like it's 10 years plus, but it's not like a very long period of time. And maybe just let me add one personal story from my side. The first experience which I've got with the internet was where I was looking at my home phone with my father, and he showed me like when Google launched its service in Germany. I don't know, it's maybe in the early 2000, and it was just a white site with a search entry. So this was really really amazing. Yeah, Meridith, let me jump to the question. What do you think? I mean, it's obvious that the internet has a huge impact on the society, but how about the network operators? Are the network operators like the railroad companies of tomorrow, or are they like the modern plat? So what do you think of our society?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting that you said that, a little over 50% of the world's population is on the internet, but that leaves a huge amount that are not. And I know that here in the US, one of probably the biggest funding measurements where the money is going to go from the government is to give it to these network operators to provide internet services in parts of our country where there isn't internet, or at least where there isn't high-speed internet. The other is I do a lot in economic development, and it truly is the new infrastructure. Back in the day, it was the towns were built around where the railroad ran or where the port was, but now it's not. It's where the really good, internet is. And I think that communities are going to be fighting for it. And I know I was working with one of my clients yesterday in rural Texas, and she's gearing up in 2021 for a lot of funding to be coming her way to be able to provide high-speed internet to a lot of the communities that don't have it right now. It's important for business, it's important for schooling and education. And I think people realize that if you don't have access to it, you're going to be a community and a population that's left behind. So I really do believe it is the network providers are truly the new railroads, and it's going to be where they provide internet is going to be the next economic booms.
Yeah, great. Maybe let me add some of interesting things to me, which was also astonishing to read. I mean, there was published a study about the impact of the internet some years ago. I guess it was also hosted from Facebook and some of research institutes about India. And just let me quote, because this is really astonishing. The study found that in India alone, extending internet access from its current level of 15% to a level comparable with that of more developed countries, let's say 75%, would create, and now comes the numbers, 65 million jobs, cut cases of extreme poverty by nearly 30%, and reduce infant mortality by 85,000 deaths a year. So this is really astonishing. And then the next thing is the bottom line. This is the bottom line. This isn't about money. It's about creating wealth and saving lives.
Yeah, I also think I really think about one of the biggest challenges that that is happening around the world right now is with the pandemic. If you don't have access to high-speed internet, how are children going to school? How are they getting educated? And there really has been a socioeconomic divide between people who don't have the means and don't have the money to access the internet and those that do. And that's creating a larger divide. So I think in the next few years, we're going to be working very hard globally to kind of fill that gap, because it is going to make the difference. Giving people access to the internet gives them access to a better business environment, a better economy, and better education for their children. In a nutshell, I think it's really exciting, because unlike the railroads, where you had to count on, railroads they had to find the easiest path to get somewhere. The internet can go anywhere, pretty much. And it's going to be exciting to see what areas of the world really develop, how this gives people choice about where they live, where they raise their children. It gives us choice about where we get an education, because I no longer have to go to the university. I can access universities all over the world. I can do it online. So to think about the transformation of it, I think that's even going to be more powerful than the railroads or shipping, is really exciting to see what the future holds.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that. Meridith, how do you think is the situation? Like, I mean, in the US, there are many of the bigger operators. Do they have potential to grow regarding the access they can reach to the customers, or is it still like on a high level and they need to change their business models to find new opportunities? I mean, in the development countries like maybe India or Africa, it's obvious that there are a lot of people not connected, and like you mentioned, in the US, of course, there are also cases. But is this really from a growth perspective? What do you think? Is this still an attractive market, or is this like becoming the railroad companies, where, of course, when the railroad companies started, there were no interconnection between the big cities, like especially in the US, it's obvious. So what do you think about that? Is it still an attractive market?
I think it's still an incredibly attractive market. Now, I work with the big operators, as well as I work with a lot of rural telecom associations. And really, they've really divided who they provide to. I mean, the bigger operators are staying in the bigger cities and the larger markets, and the rural operators are remaining dedicated to the rural populations. Now, I think what's going to be interesting about that is I think that you're going to see a lot of funding go to the rural operators, because that's where we don't have the access, and that's where we have a lot of poverty and lack of economic development. The other is now with the fact that people can work everywhere, we're seeing that people are leaving some of the big areas like Chicago, like New York City, in wanting to work in smaller communities, and that's happening all over the world. So I think that you're going to see pretty stiff competition between some of the big operators and some of these rural telecoms, as they kind of fight it out for some of these areas that grow. Like, I live in Asheville, North Carolina, which isn't a very big city, and it's quite rural around us. We have some of the big operators here, but I think that over the next few years, you're going to see more big operators here coming to compete with the rural telecoms. But I think more of the funding is going to go to the smaller operators. I think, again, that's great, because competition is good in this space. It's good. It's good because it makes the internet providers really have to stay at the top of their game. It's good for the customer and the consumer, because they have choice. And so I think that combination is going to be good. But I can tell you, from a perspective from government funding, a lot of the funding is going into the telecom industry and helping internet become. I think that our government sees it as truly the next industrial revolution.
Yeah, thanks for that. I want to add to this, thanks that you talk about the situation that maybe the pandemic leads towards this, that some of the people are moving outside the big cities. I mean, this was actually a trend which was prognosed many years also ago, like the internet will lead to a situation where especially in the startup environment, where it gets more decentralized. And so far, at least in the startup economy, until the COVID crisis, the situation was that like more of the people are moving to the bigger cities like San Francisco or New York, or the big maybe in Europe like Berlin. But I think this is really a change, and it's great that you mentioned it, that maybe the pandemic leads to it. I mean, I read a lot about San Francisco and the situation over there during the crisis, so that it's starting that since Microsoft and many of the big companies are going to an endless home office policy, that many of the talents are moving out of the big cities. So I think this is really a change. And I mean, also if every restaurant is closed, or the chances are high that everything is closed, then why do I need to stay in San Francisco and pay, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of cash to sit in a small apartment? I think this is really a change, and I'm curious about how this will go when the pandemic is over.
Yeah, I think it is going to stick. I think it's going to stick when the pandemic is over. You take New York City, and New York City is a huge financial district. Well, not all jobs lend themselves to being able to work from home. But when you take the financial services world, you take the tech world, they really can work from quote unquote anywhere. And I think that, where this pandemic lasted 60 days, it might have been different, but we're, edging close to a year now. We're just a few, just 3 or 4 months shy of a year. And now people are into the groove. And most people I talk with say, I don't miss flying. I don't miss traveling. I don't miss the commute into the office. And so I do think that it will stick. Now, I think that people will go into the office a little bit. We'll have to have a little bit of that interaction, but that requirement that you live inside these cities. And we've sort of had a perfect storm here in the US. We've not only had the pandemic, but we've had a lot of crime. We've had a lot of, protests, a lot of things that have made people feel unsettled. And add to the fact, like you said, it's just expensive to live in those places. And when you take away the convenience of, again, I say New York City and the financial district, a lot of those shops and stores that people would visit on their lunch hours just aren't making it. And with those things gone, people are going to question whether they need to go in. I also think, add to this, we're just becoming global. And it isn't about having retail space or business space where you need to be near your customers or can access people. You just don't need that anymore. And so I think that I agree with you. I think that the internet was transforming all of this. The pandemic was just supercharged it and made it all go much faster, but we were probably going here anyway.
Yeah. 2 things I would like to add to the things we talked about prior to the situation in the big cities. The first thing is like the funding from the public government, which is also the same in Germany. It changes a lot how the game is played and how it is working out. And I think there are big opportunities for smaller operators, like you mentioned, in rural areas. I mean, it's really the same like here. Of course, you need to have a little bit of a size. So if you're too small, then it's, I think, too complex. But for many operators, I think founding is a big step where they can grow. And also, it's great that you mentioned that for the customer, it's very, very cool if they have different operators who they can choose. For the operators itself, probably not. But of course, for the customers, it's great. And I think also for many operators, the question rises, like in the industry or in the modern countries, like what are the next steps after, like, this market maybe will run 5-10 years, then maybe in the US, hopefully everybody is online with very great internet access. Or maybe it took 15 years, I don't know. But what comes next for the operators?
What comes next for the operators is who knows. I mean, who knows what's on the horizon? I think that they're going to become more important and more significant. But I think that they need to be investing in research and development, because they need to be defining what the next frontier is. I think that we are going to be looking to the operators for that. I was on yesterday with a with a client. I was working with their board of directors, and we were doing some updates on their strategic plan for what's next. These are all rural telecoms. And we were deciding, really talking about what are the products and services that we see coming down the road? What do we need to be one step ahead in developing now? And what we decided was that we needed to probably spend this next year really getting in and getting to know our customers, understanding what their pain points are, what they're worried about, what they're concerned about. And from that, let the next idea for the next product or service really bubble out of that. I mean, certainly the internet will get faster, but geez, once 5G gets here, I mean, I can't imagine how much more wicked speed, that we're going to need. But whatever it is from the challenges that we're having in communicating and, and doing business, they're going to have to develop that. I think what we're doing right now is amazing. I mean, I feel connected to you. I feel as if we're in the same room, but I imagine that that's going to transform, I mean, into more holograms and more, somehow they're going to put us in the same room together. I mean, I think that it's exciting, but it's going to be the ISPs that are going to have to decide what is the next frontier, and they're going to have to lead us there, because I think we as a society are looking to them for what's next.
Yeah, that's great that you mentioned it. I mean, what I also would like to add here is like the bigger operators also in Europe and in US, it's the same. They have like venture trees where they try to separate their mothership business from more innovative ideas, which shows me that they really know that they need to adapt and change to the market. So this is something which I think is also really great. And I think they probably know that on the long run, they need to compete also with the bigger players. Like, I mean, Google is really trying to come into the market, not the fiber market. We're not successful like introducing Google Fiber, but really liking they try to go in the IoT topic really strong. I mean, many of the operators are doing this, but I think this is really a great challenge to see and to see how the innovation goes. And from the operator's point of view, I really think that they are moving more into the customers' homes, trying to better understand like what's going on there and trying to add value to really add up their service, which they can provide. And I think it's also really interesting, like regarding the traditional cable TV, which I think is also, or maybe that's a question. Do you see that it is under a disruption from the companies like Netflix, or is it something that is stable and will continue like the next 100 years? So what do you think?
I think it's under heavy disruption. I really don't know anybody under the age of 40 that has cable television. I mean, they just don't go down that avenue anymore. They don't need channels that they don't want. They don't want the hassle of what that means. They want shows in real time when they want them. They get their news off the social media platforms. So I think it's under heavy disruption. And I know that the bigger operators that I work with are spending a lot more time in the marketing and promotions space and really trying to use the data that they have to help businesses figure out how to market, that more of their time, and they see their growth in those areas. So I think that it's under heavy disruption. And I can't imagine that in the next 5 or 10 years, as kind of my generation ages up, that people are going to be, using cable television. I was kind of amazed. I do a lot of work in the financial services industry too, and a lot of the clients I have older customers, people who are 70 plus. And now, even in the 70 plus markets, they're finding that people are preferring to do their banking and things on mobile. That people are just moving to the ease of doing things those ways. And nobody really wants to watch a commercial on television anymore. So I can't imagine that that's going to hold. So I think it's under heavy, heavy disruption. And you take a company like Netflix, and they are doing an amazing job of constantly pushing the innovation envelope. They're not sitting around waiting for to see what happens in the market. They're driving the change, and that's going to keep them one step ahead.
Yeah, that is great that you mentioned it. I mean, I really like the story of Netflix. It's one of the great success stories of startups. We've spoken a little bit before. I think it's really impressive. Like they started, I guess, 97, and then first business model was like selling DVDs over the network. But they still called it Netflix in the early days, because the bet was that someday the broadband accessibility will be this good. And so I guess in year 2007 or 8, they really launched their product, which everybody knows. And that is really an impressive story. And there are a lot of things that are crazy in the startup environment. And I'm really lucky to see that the operators are moving into this direction and trying to find the new Netflix and build it out outside of their motherships. So this is something which I think is also great, because speed is very, very important in this market. And this is, I guess, somehow complex if you have your traditional core business, which is which is important. And I think this is addressed very well, but it's a huge challenge. Maybe let's speak about, you're also a best-selling book author. Maybe let's speak about, you said you're writing a new book. So how many books have you already written, and you're writing a new book which comes out? So
gosh, this will be book number 6 for me. And this book comes out in January of 2021.
Great. And what is it about?
So this book is called Thrive, Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage. And a couple of years ago, I really became obsessed with the word uncertainty, how we think about it, feel about it, react to it. And in general, as a society, we hate the word. We would rather know that something bad is going to happen than to have to live in the unknown. And it just got me wondering, I mean, what if we flip the script on that? I mean, what if we started to use uncertainty as opportunity in our business? And what if it was actually something that you could make a strategic advantage? So I started studying 9 companies that have been in business since the late 1700s, early 1800s. They're companies that are still in business, thriving today. And I wanted to know why. How did they do it? How did they come through world wars? How did they come through economic depression? How did they come through a pandemic? And from that, I wrote a 9-step formula of what every organization needs to do, no matter your size, no matter your geographic location, no matter the product you sell. I wrote a 9-step formula for what you need to do to thrive in an uncertain marketplace.
Yeah, that sounds really great. You said that Jack Daniels is one of the companies. So the first question is, do you like Jack Daniels? Do you like drinking Jack Daniels? Or is it not your taste?
Yeah, I was raised in my mother's choice of drink was an old fashioned. So a Jack Daniels old fashioned. So I could make a Jack Daniels old fashioned by the time I was 5 years old.
Really? Oh, okay, great. So I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know. Let's talk about Jack Daniels. What is astonishing about their business and their history?
Yeah, so a lot, like so many of the companies really highlighted in the book is number one is that it's a family-held business, which I think is really unique. But when I was doing the research and doing the studying, imagine that that you built this entire business. Your entire business model is on making liquor and selling liquor, and prohibition hits the United States. And all of a sudden, through no fault of your own, your business is completely wiped out. Well, I think the thing that's really astonishing about that is that their leader at the time really had a strong belief that that prohibition wouldn't last in the U.S., that U.S. citizens wouldn't go for it for a long time. And so all he did was kept the vision, protected the recipe of the of Jack Daniels, and but did other things he needed to do in order to keep the business going. They moved to Florida and they grew citrus, they grew other crops, but they kept pumping money into this family business, getting ready for when prohibition would be relaxed. And the moment that it did, They were first back to market. They rebuilt their still within their plant within 72 hours, and were able to turn it around in nothing flat. And I think what it speaks about, and really what I learned from researching the book, is you've got to realize if you own a business, you are going to go through bad times. You're going to have amazing years, but there are going to be things that happen, like a pandemic, like prohibition, that completely take away your ability to do your business. But you have to have a passionate belief in what you do, and you have to have a commitment in what you do. And then you've got to let go of your ego enough to be willing to do whatever it takes to keep the business going until the tides turn and the market is back in your favor. I mean, I have to say that's the biggest thing that I learned, is that according to history, a pandemic is nothing for a business to come through. When you compare it to a world war, when you compare it to economic depression, the other things that people that our forefathers have experienced with their businesses, it's nothing. So you have to have the grit to hold on, and the commitment and the belief. And if you don't hold that passion as a leader that you can be successful, chances are your business won't make it.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying. I mean, it's great. It's great to see from the older economy how they struggled with other crises, and to see that they make it through. And I think what I really like to compare is that when we imagined like the established companies, maybe they have the last decades a well-working business model, and now they are facing different times and challenging times. So it's really challenging for them. But to see what was happening in the history and adapt maybe some of the strategies is great. And I really love the idea to stick to your vision and really go forward straight to this direction, no matter what came in front. Just put it out of the way, even if you have to sell like other stuff. And I mean, what I really see is like also in the startup environment is really this toughness, which is required, like the Netflix story shows or Airbnb. They I guess in the beginning they sold like for the elevation different cartoons or I don't know. Yeah. So it's like this, which is really tough, and which I think could be a great learning also for maybe some of the companies who worked very well in the last times, that in some environment it's normal that you have to daily struggle, and it's really tough times you have to go through, like from the startup point of view. It's always like fighting. And I really like to learn more about the traditional companies that you've analyzed, like they go through different crises. So this is really interesting. Meridith, what else can we learn? So is there maybe another very interesting company or thing that we need to speak about, or you would like to speak about?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories. Well, first of all, I want to say, understand, just because we're talking a bit about the startup community, is that these companies started with nothing. So even though they're successful today, they've been around for hundreds of years. Just like you, they were rubbing a couple of sticks together, hoping that magic would happen. Yep. And one of my favorite stories from the book is with company Proctor Gamble, known today as P&G. Now, Proctor Gamble was started by two men who married sisters. One sold candles and the other sold soap, and they competed for wax. And their future father-in-law said, "Boys, why don't you form a company?" And so P&G was born in the early 1800s. Now, I think the biggest and most important lesson to learn from Procter & Gamble is that they decided that right from the start, how they would develop products and services and how they would gain competitive advantage was that they would listen to customers. And whatever customers were saying were their biggest problems is how they would develop products and services. Well, at that time, they were making soap. And you want to talk about a commodity. Everybody and their brother was making soap. How do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? Was as they were out talking with customers, people said, "We love soap." But the biggest problem with soap is when you get in the bathtub and you use soap and you drop it, soap goes to the bottom of the bathtub and you have to spend all this time searching around trying to find it. So they went back to the drawing board and they developed Ivory soap. And Ivory soap is still on the market today. And it was known as the soap that floats. And by the middle 1800s, Procter & Gamble was $1 million company. Now imagine being $1 million company in the 1800s, but also they did it not because they invented some crazy product or anything. They just took a commodity product, analyzed what is the pain point for the customer, and use that to gain competitive advantage. And I think that is something we all need to listen to right now, because success comes down to being relevant. You have to be relevant. Stop selling the features and benefits of your product. Sell the relevancy. What's the pain point that your customer is having, and how can you use that to gain traction in the marketplace? Netflix is a beautiful example of that. If you look at their history, the only way they gained competitive advantage is they kept identifying and changing to what the customer was saying was important to them. And I think that's such a vital message for all of us.
Yeah, that's great. I really love to read about it, especially like the companies which are not this well known. I mean, in my generation, the guys who are working as an entrepreneur or in the tech sector, we very well know the heroic stories of Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or whoever, like Larry Page and founding Google. And one of the astonishing things I've always came across is like when Steve Jobs came back to Apple when the company was really in a bad shape, and he turned around the business within 90 days with a company with 10,000 of employees. So this is something like, okay, crazy. But I think it's a lot of more things to cover. And I think it's really great that you analyzed like a more traditional and maybe family-owned businesses and from different aspects, and to see how they have made it. So I think it's really relevant, and I would really like to read about it. So when came the book online, or what is the next steps to get to read it?
Well, I'll make sure that you get a signed copy as soon as it comes hot off the presses. But we expect to have it out there for order in January of 2021. It should be released by the end of January. People will be able to find it, online, as well as definitely be able to order it on Amazon. I do want to say again, what I love about the book is not only have these companies survived really challenging times, but as you said, these companies aren't sexy. They don't make sexy products. It's not exciting stuff. And if you can get businesses to survive that, don't even make a sexy product that people are rapidly attracted to, it's an impressive story. And the 9 components, again, I don't care what you sell, what you create, or what you make. These are fundamental principles you need to have in your business. And if you apply all 9, you put them in and you put them in order, it's really going to position you to be successful.
Yeah, great. One thing which came to my mind, which I would like to speak, is the topic of leadership. How was it back in the, let's call it, good old days? I mean, in the startup economy, we really think about like if there is something to face, 2 different kind of styles. The one thing is like, I think is Google handling most of the stuff. Like, okay, we put all together our best people and everybody throws his opinion on the table, and then we decide together. I think Netflix is the same story. Like they've pivoted several times, not just the 2 that we've mentioned. It's more, and it's like really all the employees sit together and talk about it. And then on the other hand, we have the Steve Jobs style, who is really like a war CEO who comes into the business and says, okay, now follow me, and who is not following me is in my way. So how was it back in the good old days? How was the leadership working there? Did you cover it also on this topic? Because this I would find very interesting.
Yes, I would say that leadership styles were very different depending on the company and depending on the time. As you can imagine, in the 1700s and the 1800s, it was very driven top down leadership. You sort of went to work for a company and sort of did what you were told, and the leaders were very much in charge. However, there's 2 things that I think really stand out from a leadership perspective that I think are something we need to pay attention to. Number 1 is all of these companies have had strong succession plans. There's never been a question that if anything happened to the leader, that somebody else couldn't step in, take over, and be as well qualified to run that company. So they were big on sustainability. The second is they were big on something that we've gotten very lax in our society today, and that is training and development. In the 1700s, early 1800s, and the early part of the 1900s, apprenticeships were very important things. It's pretty much not everybody went to college, and a lot of times they would go on the job and they would learn the skills, and they would do an apprenticeship for a couple of years before they were even allowed to hold a position. And so they were very, very dedicated to training and teaching the skills and making sure that they were handed down from one generation to the next. Now that's important, because if you look at the research and the statistics today, we speak a lot about leadership. We speak a lot about leadership training, but the gap between companies that say it's a priority and the ones who actually invest in it is really wide. We just don't train people to lead an organization or even train them on the skills they need to be qualified. So if I had to say two things that really stood out, it were those. They had a succession plan. They never thought the leader was going to live forever or stay forever. And they had a strong and solid plan in place. And then they trained and they developed people. They didn't make people figure it out on their own.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I always thought like this is also evolution of the Silicon Valley, like getting the people more into education stuff. And but it's great to know that it's even like more than 100 years around. So that's great. Yeah, I will definitely read the book, and I'm looking forward to get it. I'm curious. Let me give another book advice, which came across several days. I've saw the book many times, which is from Ben Horowitz. It's called, he has actually written 2 books. I really like them because it's also about the hard times in business. And I would really also give a shout out to these 2 books. The first thing is called The Hard Thing About the Hard Things. And the second thing is What You Do Is Who You Are. So this is also a great reading advice from my side. I really liked it. And I'm really looking forward to get your book and to understand more about these traditional businesses and how they evolved through different crises. So every crisis holds chance for new involvement and new ideas. So that is the good news. And Meridith, do you have anything to add here?
Just that I want people to know. I mean, I think you said it really well. Every crisis holds incredible opportunity. If I learned anything from the research, it's that disruption can be a really good thing. And if you lean into it and you get your head right around the fact that there's opportunity right now, it's going to lead you down a path that's going to take your company to another level. But it's they're pretty simple concepts, but it's not easy. You've got to have a lot of courage, understand that you're going to have good times, you're going to have bad times. But if I want people to take anything, it's to understand that there is tremendous opportunity right now. You just have to lean into it and go out there and get it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think this is a good last word. I would not add anything here. That is really great, Meridith. Thanks so far. I will read the book, and thanks for watching and listening to the ISP Insights Podcast. Our amazing guest was Meridith Powell, and my name is Thorsten Schmidt. Thanks for watching.